Every morning at 6:15, the old range safety officer arrived before anyone else. He'd stand at lane 12, stare downrange for exactly 2 minutes, then walk away. The Marines joked he was senile. They didn't know he was looking at the exact distance of a shot fired 53 years ago in Vietnam. A shot that killed an NVA colonel from 2,475 meters and changed the course of a classified operation. A shot that still had his name on it, buried in a logbook that 3 people thought had been destroyed. Before we reveal what happened when someone finally asked him about that morning ritual, don't forget to subscribe and tell us which country and city you're watching from. The man's name was Vincent Caruso, though nobody at Camp Pendleton's Range 215 called him that. To the young Marines cycling through annual rifle qualification, he was just Pops, or the old guy, the 68-year-old civilian contractor who checked range cards, verified weapons conditions, and made sure nobody did anything stupid with a loaded M4. He wore the same faded Padres cap every day, the same khaki work pants, the same weathered expression that suggested he'd seen enough excitement for one lifetime and wasn't looking for more. Most days he barely spoke. He'd arrive in his beat-up Silverado at dawn, unlock the range shack, raise the red flag that meant the range was hot, and take his position behind the firing line. The Marines would joke about him while they zeroed their rifles, wonder out loud if he'd ever even fired a weapon, speculate about whether he'd been Air Force or Navy back in the day, something soft. The instructors ignored him, the company commanders forgot he was there, and that was exactly how Vincent Caruso wanted it. The routine had been the same for 6 years. Unlock the shack, check the equipment, raise the flag. Walk to lane 12, stare downrange. 2 minutes, not 1 minute 59 seconds. Not 2 minutes 1 second. Exactly 2 minutes. Then back to the shack, where he'd sit on the wooden stool behind the counter, drink coffee from a stained thermos, and wait for the day's shooters to arrive. He never brought lunch, never listened to music, never read a book. Just sat there, watching the Marines come and go, his face betraying nothing. But Second Lieutenant Marcus Webb noticed things other people missed. It was his first year as a platoon commander, his first time running a rifle qual course, and he'd been watching the old man for 3 weeks. Every morning, same ritual. Lane 12, 2 minutes, staring downrange at nothing. Webb had checked. Lane 12 faced due east, out toward the impact berm 800 yards away. There was nothing special about it. No particular terrain feature, no memorial plaque, just dirt and distance. On a Thursday in October, Webb's platoon was running through their Table 2 drills when one of his corporals, a cocky kid named Henson who'd gone to scout sniper school and washed out in week 3, started mouthing off. The platoon was shooting poorly. Too many marksmen, not enough expert scores. Henson blamed the range, blamed the wind, blamed the rifles. Then he spotted Caruso standing near the ammo bunker, watching. "Yo, Pops," Henson called out, loud enough for the whole line to hear. "You ever actually shoot one of these, or you just collect a paycheck for standing around?" Caruso didn't respond, didn't even look over. Henson grinned, emboldened. "I'm serious, man. You know the difference between safe and fire? Because half these boots shoot better than you probably could." Webb should have shut it down, should have told Henson to focus on his own target. But he was curious, too. The old man's face hadn't changed. No anger, no embarrassment. Just that same flat, distant expression. "Corporal Henson," Caruso said quietly, still not turning around. "Your last group was 11 inches at 100 yards. That's pathetic." The line went quiet. Henson's grin faltered. "The hell would you know? I know you're jerking the trigger, flinching before the break, and your breathing's garbage." Caruso finally turned to look at him. "You want me to show you how it's done, or you want to keep running your mouth?" Webb stepped forward before Henson could respond. "Mr. Caruso, with respect, Corporal Henson's the best shooter in the platoon. If you've got advice, we'll take it. But if you're just talking, I'm not just talking." Caruso walked toward the firing line, his boots crunching on the gravel. He stopped at lane 7, where Henson had been shooting, picked up the M4, checked the chamber, examined the optic, pulled the charging handle, back halfway, visually confirmed the chamber was clear again, then let it ride forward, removed the magazine, counted the rounds. 27. He looked at Henson. "You loaded 30. Fired 3, should be 27 left. Good." He reinserted the magazine, seated it with a palm strike. "You want to see proper marksmanship, Lieutenant?" Webb nodded slowly. "Sure, let's see it." Caruso's stance was wrong immediately. Feet too wide, body angled almost 45 degrees to the target. Elbows out, not tucked. Grip loose, not firm. Every Marine on the line started grinning. This was going to be good. The old man was about to embarrass himself. One of the Marines pulled out his phone, ready to record it. Another made a comment about old-timer combat stance that got a few laughs. Then Caruso fired. 5 rounds. Controlled pair, single shot. Smooth. No jerking, no hesitation. The rifle barely moved between shots. The brass casings ejected in a perfect arc, landing in a neat pile to his right. When the last casing hit the dirt, Caruso safed the weapon, placed it on the bench, and stepped back. The entire firing line had gone silent. The Marine with the phone had stopped recording, just staring. "Check it," Caruso said. Webb walked downrange with his spotting scope, Henson trailing behind. At 100 yards, Henson's target had holes scattered across the black, decent but spread out. Caruso's target had one hole, a single ragged opening about the size of a quarter, maybe slightly larger. All 5 rounds through the same point of impact. The paper around the hole was barely torn. It looked like someone had punched it with a precision tool. Henson stared at it, face pale. That's not possible. Not with that stance." "It's possible," Caruso said from behind them. "You just don't know why." Webb turned around. "Where'd you learn to shoot like that?" Caruso didn't answer. He walked back toward the range shack, his morning ritual apparently over for the day, but Webb wasn't letting it go. He jogged to catch up, lowering his voice so the platoon couldn't hear. "Mr. Caruso." "Sir, that wasn't a lucky group. That was professional. Where'd you serve?" Caruso stopped walking. For a long moment he didn't say anything. Then, quietly, 3rd Marine Division, 1st Battalion, 4th Marines, Vietnam, 1970 to 1972. Webb's eyebrows went up. "Infantry? Scout sniper?" That explained the shooting. But it didn't explain the rest. "And you've been here 6 years, working as a range safety officer. Why? If you were a sniper—" "I was a lot of things, Lieutenant." Caruso turned to face him, and for the first time, Webb saw something in the old man's eyes that hadn't been there before. Something hard, something distant. Most of them aren't on any service record you'd be able to access. Webb opened his mouth to respond, but Caruso was already walking away. The conversation was over. The next morning, Webb arrived at the range early, 6:10. He parked his truck near the shack and waited. 5 minutes later, Caruso's Silverado rolled in. The old man got out, unlocked the shack, raised the flag. Then he walked to lane 12, stood at the firing line and stared downrange. Webb checked his watch, waited. At exactly 2 minutes, Caruso turned and walked back toward the shack. Webb got out of his truck. "What are you looking at out there?" Caruso stopped, turned. "Nothing you'd understand, try me." For a moment it looked like Caruso was going to walk away again. Then something changed in his expression. Resignation, maybe, or exhaustion. He reached into his jacket pocket and pulled out a small black notebook. Worn leather, pages yellowed and brittle at the edges. He opened it to a page near the middle and held it out. Webb took it carefully like it might disintegrate in his hands. The page had a single entry, handwritten in faded blue ink, dated March 14, 1971. Target, NVA Colonel Nguyen Van Thieu. Distance, 2,475 meters. Conditions, 12 miles per hour crosswind, 87 degrees Fahrenheit, 60% humidity. Rifle, M40. Unyer TL 10 times scope. Round, 7.6, 2x51 millimeters, M118. Result, confirmed kill, 1 round, TOT, 9:47 local. Webb read it twice, 3 times. 2,475 meters. That's over 1.5 miles. Caruso nodded. 2,475 meters, 16 inches. Measured by laser rangefinder after the fact. Longest confirmed kill in Marine Corps history at the time. Still is, technically. Except nobody's allowed to talk about it. Why not? Because the target wasn't supposed to be killed. He was supposed to be captured. Caruso's voice stayed flat, emotionless, like he was reciting coordinates from a map. CIA wanted him alive for interrogation. MacVisog had a team in position to snatch him after a meeting in Quang Tri Province. My spotter and I were supposed to provide overwatch, nothing more. Keep eyes on the target, report movement, make sure the snatch team had a clear approach. Standard reconnaissance tasking. He paused, looked down at the notebook in Webb's hands, but the meeting got moved. Different location. The snatch team couldn't reposition in time, and the colonel was about to get in a helicopter and disappear for another 6 months. I'd been tracking that man for 7 months. Across 3 provinces, watched him plan ambushes that killed Marines, watched him coordinate mortar attacks on firebase perimeters, watched him walk away over and over because someone higher up the chain wanted him captured instead of killed. Webb turned the page. There were more entries, dozens of them, dates, distances, conditions, some marked confirmed, others marked probable. One marked unconfirmed, body not recovered. All in the same neat handwriting, all from Vietnam, all from 1970 to 1972. I had 30 seconds to make a decision, Caruso continued. My spotter, his name was Danny Reeves, kid from Tennessee, 19 years old, told me not to take the shot, said it was too far, too much wind, too many variables. He was right. On paper, it was impossible. The M40 wasn't designed for that range. The round would drop over 60 feet from muzzle to impact. The crosswind would push it 8 feet lateral. I'd have to calculate spin drift, Coriolis effect, air density, temperature, and I had maybe 20 seconds before the target got on that helicopter. Caruso took the notebook back, closed it carefully, slid it back into his pocket. But I'd been tracking that man for 7 months, knew his walk, knew his posture, knew the way he moved, and I knew if he got on that helicopter, a lot of Marines were going to die in operations he'd planned. So I did the math in my head, adjusted for wind, adjusted for drop, held 3 mils high, 2 mils left, and I sent the round. Webb didn't say anything. There was nothing to say. Time of flight was 4.2 seconds. I watched the colonel through the scope the entire time, watched him take 2 steps toward the helicopter, watched him gesture to one of his aides, watched him turn his head to look back at the building where the meeting had been, and then the round hit him, center mass, dropped him on the tarmac 20 feet from the helicopter. The pilot spooled up and took off without him. The aides scattered, and my spotter and I packed our gear and moved to the exfil point. Caruso turned to look at lane 12, at the impact berm 800 yards away. 3 days later, I got pulled out of Vietnam and reassigned to a desk job at Quantico for the rest of my enlistment. The CIA lost their interrogation target. MACV-SOG lost their capture mission, and I got a very polite letter thanking me for my service and informing me that my after-action report had been classified at a level that required congressional oversight to access. They told me the mission never happened, the kill was never recorded, and if I ever talked about it, I'd spend the rest of my life in Leavenworth for revealing classified information. They punished you for making the shot? Caruso shook his head. They buried it. The mission never happened. The kill was never recorded. My after-action report was classified at a level I didn't even know existed, and the Marine Corps record for longest confirmed kill stayed with Carlos Hathcock at 2,286 meters, because my shot officially never took place. Webb stared at him. That's why you stand here every morning. You're measuring the distance, lane 12 to the impact. Berm is 732 meters, almost exactly a third of the distance I shot in Quang Tri. I stand here and I try to remember what it felt like. The wind, the calculation, the certainty. Because most days I can't. Most days it feels like it happened to someone else, like it was a story I heard, not something I did. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The sun was coming up over the eastern hills, casting long shadows across the range. Somewhere in the distance, a sergeant was yelling at a group of Marines doing morning PT. The sound carried across the range, faint and rhythmic. Webb handed the notebook back. Mr. Caruso, with all due respect, why the hell are you working as a range safety officer? Caruso smiled, but there was no humor in it. Because this is the closest I can get to a rifle range without someone asking questions. And because I like watching young Marines learn to shoot. Reminds me of when it mattered. It still matters. Does it? Caruso looked at him. I made a shot that's in the record books, except it's not. I saved lives, except officially I didn't. I served my country, except half of what I did was classified so deep that even I can't talk about it. So what matters, Lieutenant? The truth, or what people are allowed to know? Webb didn't have an answer for that. Caruso turned and walked back toward the shack, and this time Webb didn't follow, but he couldn't let it go. Over the next 2 weeks, Webb started digging. He called in favors, talked to a buddy at HQMC who had access to archive personnel files, searched through declassified after-action reports from 1971. Most of it was redacted, black bars over names, dates, locations, but he kept digging, cross-referenced mission names with known operations, tracked down unit deployment records, found a Vietnam veteran who'd served in the same battalion as Caruso and was willing to talk off the record. The veteran's name was Raymond Keller, 72 years old, living in San Diego. Webb drove down on a Saturday morning, found him at a VFW hall drinking coffee and watching a college football game on a small TV behind the bar. Vincent Caruso, Keller said when Webb mentioned the name. Yeah, I remember him. Quiet kid, didn't talk much, good shot though, real good. You served with him? Same battalion, different platoon. But I was there when he got pulled out, March 71. Whole thing was strange. He came back from a mission, went straight to the CO's hooch, and 6 hours later he was on a helicopter to Da Nang. Never saw him again. You know what the mission was? Keller shook his head. Nobody talked about it, but I heard rumors. Long-range sniper hit. Target was supposed to be captured, not killed. Caruso took the shot anyway. CIA was pissed. MAC-V was pissed. But the target was a high-value NVA officer, so they couldn't exactly court-martial the guy who killed him. So they buried it. Webb leaned forward. You ever hear a distance? Yeah. 2,400 and change. Meters. Nobody believed it. Still don't, honestly. But Caruso wasn't the kind of guy who lied. Webb thanked him, drove back to Pendleton, kept digging, and then he found it, buried in a folder marked compartmented, special access required, archived in a database that required 3 levels of security clearance to access, was a single-page mission summary from March 1971. Operation Phantom Shepherd, Quang Tri Province, long-range interdiction, target eliminated at extreme distance by Scout Sniper Team 2-4. No names, no specifics, but the distance was listed. 2,475 meters. The date matched. The location matched. The outcome matched. Webb printed the document, brought it to the range the next morning, found Caruso in the shack, filling out a daily safety checklist, the same one he filled out every morning. The old man looked up when Webb walked in, saw the paper in his hand, and his expression didn't change. Where'd you get this? Caruso asked. Friend at headquarters. It's declassified now, barely, still redacted to hell, but it's real. Caruso looked at the paper, read it slowly, then set it down on the counter between them. So you're in the Marine Corps history books, whether the Corps admits it or not. And I think you deserve more than standing on a rifle range watching boots miss targets. Caruso picked up the paper again, studied it like he was seeing it for the first time. You don't get it, Lieutenant. I'm not here because I have to be. I'm here because this is where I want to be. Nobody knows my name, nobody asks questions, nobody expects anything. And that's exactly what I need. Webb leaned against the desk. What if I told you the Marksmanship Training Unit at Quantico is looking for a senior instructor? Retired Marine snipers only. They specifically requested someone with Vietnam-era experience, someone who can teach the old methods, the fundamentals. I could make a call. Caruso shook his head. I'm 68 years old. I'm not training the next generation of killers. You're already doing it. You just did it 2 weeks ago when you showed Corporal Henson how to shoot. You think he's not going to remember that? You think he's not going to pass that on? Caruso stared at the paper for a long time. The sun was higher now, light streaming through the shack's single window, illuminating the dust in the air. Outside, the first group of Marines was arriving for morning qualification. Webb could hear their voices, joking and complaining, the sound of gear being dropped on tables. I'll think about it, Caruso said finally. Webb left the paper on the counter and walked out. 3 weeks passed. Caruso kept showing up at 6:15, kept walking to lane 12, kept staring downrange for exactly 2 minutes. Webb stopped asking, stopped pushing, but he noticed changes, small ones. Caruso started talking to the Marines more, offering tips, correcting stances, explaining breathing techniques. Word spread. Marines from other platoons started showing up early, asking if the old man could watch their groupings, tell them what they were doing wrong. Caruso never said much, just short corrections, minimal words. But the Marines listened, and their scores improved. Corporal Henson showed up one morning before dawn, found Caruso already at the range, sitting on the bench at lane 12, drinking coffee from his thermos. Henson had his rifle case with him. Didn't say anything at first, just set the case down and stood there, waiting. Caruso looked up. You're early, wanted to ask you something. Henson shifted his weight, uncomfortable. That stance you used, the one that's all wrong. Why does it work? Caruso took a sip of coffee, stared at the impact berm. It doesn't work for everyone. Worked for me because I learned to shoot on uneven ground. Rice paddies, hillsides, positions where you can't get a perfect stance. You adapt. Find what's stable for your body, not what the manual says. Henson nodded slowly. Can you show me? For the next hour, as the sun came up over the eastern hills, Caruso walked Henson through fundamentals that weren't in any Marine Corps manual. How to read mirage, how to feel wind on your face and translate it to bullet drift, how to control your heartbeat during the trigger press, how to shoot when your position is compromised and there's no time for perfect form. By the time other Marines started arriving for morning qual, Henson had fired 30 rounds. His groupings were tighter than they'd ever been. He looked at Caruso with something close to reverence. Thank you, Henson said. Caruso just nodded, packed up his thermos, walked back to the shack, but Henson wasn't the only one. Over the next week, more Marines showed up early. A lance corporal from weapons company who couldn't zero his optic, a sergeant from 2nd Battalion who was failing his annual qual, A staff sergeant preparing for Scout Sniper School who wanted to learn from someone who'd actually been there. Caruso helped them all, never asked for anything, never talked about Vietnam unless someone specifically asked. And even then, he kept it brief, technical, no war stories, no glory, just wind, distance, and breathing. Then one morning in November, Webb arrived at the range and Caruso wasn't there. The shack was locked. The flag wasn't raised. Webb checked his phone. No messages. Called the range operations office. They said Caruso had taken a leave of absence. Personal reasons. No return date given. Webb felt something sink in his chest. He'd pushed too hard. Brought up things the old man wanted buried. And now Caruso was gone. But 2 days later, Webb got a call from Quantico. Lieutenant Webb? This is Master Gunnery Sergeant Holland, Marksmanship Training Unit. I understand you recommended Vincent Caruso for a senior instructor position? Webb sat up straight. Yes, Gunny, I did. Well, he showed up here yesterday. Walked into my office, handed me his DD 214 and said you told him we needed someone who could teach fundamentals. That true? Yes, Gunny. There was a pause. Then, his DD 214 has a lot of redactions. A lot. But what's not redacted shows 2 combat tours, multiple commendations, and an honorable discharge in 1972. He took our qualification test this morning. Shot a perfect score at 1,000 yards with iron sights. Iron sights, Lieutenant. My instructors couldn't believe it. Webb smiled. He's the real deal, Gunny. Yeah, I'm getting that impression. We're bringing him on as a contractor. 6-month trial. If he works out, we'll make it permanent. Thought you'd want to know. Webb thanked him, hung up, sat in his office at Pendleton and stared at the wall. 3 months later, he got a letter, handwritten, postmarked from Quantico, Virginia. Lieutenant Webb, you were right. It still matters. The young Marines here don't know my name, don't know my record, don't need to. They just need to learn how to shoot, how to breathe, how to calculate wind and distance, how to make the impossible, shot when it counts. I'm teaching them, not because I want recognition, not because I need validation, but because 53 years ago, a 19-year-old kid from Tennessee told me not to take a shot, and I took it anyway. And for 53 years, I've been wondering if I made the right call. I still don't know. But I know this, if I can teach one Marine to make the right call when it matters, then maybe it was worth it. The record doesn't matter. The logbook doesn't matter. What matters is the next shot, the next Marine, the next mission. Thank you for reminding me. 5th Caruso. Webb folded the letter carefully and put it in his desk drawer. 6 months later, the Marine Corps Marksmanship Training Unit published a new manual on long-range precision shooting. The foreword was written by a senior instructor identified only as 5th C, USMC Ret. It didn't mention Vietnam, didn't mention records, didn't mention classified operations. But in the margins of the manual, in the notes passed between instructors, in the quiet conversations at Scout Sniper reunions, a name started appearing. The old man who made the impossible shot. The ghost with the record nobody could touch. The Marine who stood at lane 12 every morning, measuring a distance that only he could see. And on a shelf in a small apartment near Quantico, Virginia, Vincent Caruso kept a black notebook, worn leather, yellowed pages, open to March 14, 1971. A single shot, a single name, a record that would never be broken because it would never officially exist, but he knew. And now, a few others did too. That was enough.